We've lost some 97% of these wildflower meadows. A unique collection of plants, insects, small mammals. And as the decline continues, each one like this becomes increasingly rare and therefore of greater value.
From a trial perspective, what this is showing us is what is the difference between green hay and bagged. And so we can demonstrate to farmers who might be thinking of doing this the techniques and show them the difference. And also it helps inform the advisors who work for Natural England about what the difference is that you will get. But obviously we're at the very early days in this trial, so as time goes on it will be interesting to see if the plots start to merge together or if you start to get other differences, and that will help inform us when we are looking at a site and trying to choose what is the best technique for establishing this.
So let's see what's involved in getting us to the second summer of this trial. We sowed it in autumn 2013, and in the winter 2013, spring 2014, we had 6 weeks of flooding. There was a concern, what on earth is going to survive? But we shouldn't have worried. Mother Nature manages to sort its own out. During the first summer, what we had to do was deal with the annual weeds, namely chickweed and fat hen. 3 mowings in the spring and the summer kept these annuals at bay, whilst giving the perennials the space they needed.
It's only been down for 2 years and we've got a range of wildflowers here. We've got an obvious difference between the plots, which is good, but it's the diversity of the flowers we've got here already and the fact it is established so well, especially given the fact we've been through drought, we've been through floods, and looking out across the fields. I think what's so interesting is the difference between the sown plots and the plots that had the green hay spread on. In the green hay you've got more clumps of the flowers, they're sporadic. They're here and there, whereas in the sown sward it's much more uniform and they're everywhere. So for example the oxeye daisy, there's a uniform carpet of that, whereas in the green hay they're here and there throughout the sward, which replicates what you would expect to see in a more natural meadow, an old meadow that had been there for hundreds of years.
So what do the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology tell us from their research, from their plant counting? Relating to plants, there appears to be very little difference between the flooded areas and the no flooded areas. I think this was a great surprise to everybody. The control had 4 different species in the flooded or unflooded areas. No real differences. In the bagged mix, we have a total of 16 species in the unflooded and 14 in the flooded. The green hay produced 11 species in the no flood and 10 species in the flood. Again, a very small difference, but in real terms I think what we can say is the control is fairly species poor. It was designed as an animal feed, and we're looking at considerably more species in the green hay and the bagged. This, if we can get the balance right, could be species-rich hay where animals would benefit from some of the nutrients and minerals, but what we have to bear in mind is that although the nutrients and the minerals are beneficial, it's actually feeding animals that we're trying to emulate in this old hay meadow system.
It is not as diverse yet. In terms of you haven't got the number of species in there that would have been in the donor site. You don't quite know what's going to come up next year. So every year for probably 10 even longer years, you will get something different popping up. Something else might disappear, or it might there might be less of it, and that's what makes it so interesting, and which is why having CEH doing the survey work also is adding such value to this, because it's telling us what we sort of think we know, but it's actually putting that into firm evidence. The green hay came from a site that was an old hay meadow, and so the species are adapted to that hay making cycle. So after they set seed, sort of mid-July, could be slightly earlier, could be slightly later depending on the year, they will have a hay cut, and then ideally you bring stock in to do some aftermath grazing. That aftermath grazing is key to help the seeds to open up the sward and encourage the seeds to get trampled in and to get close to the soil so they can germinate and grow again. And obviously, because if you're taking hay every year, you're constantly taking off the field. So having stock in here will put some muck back in, which again will help with the fertility of the site and also organic matter into the soil.
Lastly, let's deal with soil nutrient. We've disturbed the soil in creating a seed bed, we've released nutrient, we've created rocket fuel onto which we've sown the seed. This actually is a problem because we want slow, gentle, more open growth. Having seen the new meadows, I think it's worth coming back to the donor meadow with a fresh pair of eyes. What we're looking at here is something that over time, over hundreds of years, has settled down. It seems to be at peace. The sward is fairly short, and what's happened is that the nutrient has sort of been locked up. It's not an impoverished field because it's a heavy soil, but because the soil hasn't been disturbed in any way and aerated, the nutrients are almost in suspension. So we've got this short, quite open structure. The new meadows are a bit like a battleground. We've seen all this turmoil, all this pushing and jostling for space. Let me use Yorkshire fog as a means of illustrating this inharmony at rest. The donor meadow, 200-year-old, and we have as a background species some Yorkshire fog. Looking at the new meadow that is vibrant, young and full of energy, this background Yorkshire fog population has become an impenetrable jungle in the new one, and it's how we manage the new one in the future that will make or break whether or not we can get back to this slower in harmony situation, rich in species diversity. Let me try and put into context why I think this meadow is so important. Yes, we've lost 98%. Does it matter? I think it does, because I'm sitting amongst a massive genetic pool. As that genetic pool shrinks, the ability we have as people to reach out to things we might need in the future also starts to shrink. I think it's the balance between food for us and food for wildlife that we have to strive for, quite simply because the bigger the genetic pool, the stronger we are as people within the world we live in.